Good morning, everybody out there, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, whoever happens to be seeing this live or later. Good morning, and I just want to welcome you to I think this is episode number 5 or 6. I think it's 6 actually, of Products with Purpose, which is an interview series that I've started recently. Introduce myself. My name is Eli Harrell. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur, a big advocate of lifelong self-directed learning, and a huge supporter of purpose-driven businesses. The purpose of this interview series called Products with Purpose is to tell the stories of extraordinary people like this morning we have Dervla, who are really going all in to create real impact through business. People that are building products and businesses that are meant to sustainably change the way we live, the way that we see the role of business on this planet. And as many of you know, when you really go all in on something like that, failure can really be disheartening. So the goal of the show is to increase the odds of other people out there trying to have impact by sharing stories of others who are in the same vital game. So it is my pleasure to welcome and introduce to you Dervla Loughnane. I hope I pronounced her name correctly.
Yeah.
And Dervla is a qualified psychologist with 22 years of experience in clinical and organizational psychology. She was interestingly born in Zimbabwe, has worked across the globe in many large corporations, and has been exposed to a variety of critical incidents ranging from fatalities to redundancies, which has led her to this special interest she has in suicide prevention. So Dervla founded Virtual Psychologist, and which is a really fascinating model to me, which it delivers psychological services via text in Australia, New Zealand, and the Philippines so far. So I'm in the Philippines, Dervla's in Australia, and we're talking about something that she's doing that's serving people in both countries, which I think is really cool. So welcome, Dervla, and thank you for being here this morning.
Great, Eli. Thanks very much. Really looking forward to today.
Me too. Thanks for being here. So just to get us kicked off and get us started, tell us a little bit about your journey, a little glimpse into your history, how you kind of became who you are, and what led you to get passionate about this mission that you've now got with Virtual Psychologist.
Well, thanks, Eli. Basically, I've been a psychologist for, as you said, for 22 years, and I am very passionate about what I do. And as you've mentioned, I've sort of lived and traveled around the world. But basically, back in 2017, I was working for a large organization, and I attended the suicide of a young man. And we got called in, and next to him had been his mobile phone. And with the help of police, we checked his phone records, and it was evident that he had made no attempt to reach out for help. And I asked myself, what was so confronting for this young man that he didn't reach out for any help? Could a simple text message have saved his life? And it was that sort of turning point that I went back into work that day and I quit my job. And I thought, is there another way that people could reach out for help? And I thought about it, and he wasn't the only person that was suffering. I had traveled the world globally and realized that this was a global problem, that a lot of people couldn't reach out for help. And I just asked myself, could the simple thought of offering a text messaging service make a difference? And really that started this whole journey. So it was that one sort of trigger that created this. But I had been noticing sort of changes in the way people communicated. I traveled via train every day to work. I was on the train for 3 hours a day. And I was noticing more and more people were engaging with their phone. A lot of people weren't talking anymore. And that sort of just put all that information together. And I just went, right, I need to see, as a psychologist, can we save more lives by simply offering text?
That makes a lot of sense. It fascinates me when I hear stories of people that had kind of a trigger moment in their lives where they just instantly knew they had to do something and they just acted immediately, like quitting your job the same day. But it sounds like you're saying that was kind of the needle in the haystack, right? Or the straw that broke the horse's back, that kind of just led to the point where you'd been observing data all this time and this was just the trigger. Is that
Absolutely, Eli. I had been watching, I was really curious. I had been noticing as a psychologist for 22 years that we were sort of seeing less and less engagement of those people that really needed help. They weren't using mainstream services. And people were finding it harder and harder to sit in a chair with me and actually be totally honest and say, you know what, I'm thinking about taking my own life. And I sort of noticed that people were finding things more confronting. They were more embarrassed to say what was really on their mind. Some people were finding it quite inconvenient to actually try get hold of a psychologist. And I think some of the things, coming from Zimbabwe and having traveled a lot, that there were a lot of countries where there just wasn't any psychological services. There just weren't the expertise available to people. So from my own background, coming from Africa, I really saw that. And as we started to work with the Philippines, I was really surprised at how few services were available to people and how stigmatized mental health was.
Yeah.
And it continues to be very stigmatized. And, maybe I was never going to make a huge change to the world, but I was going to start. And, on that day, that was exactly what you said, the straw that broke the camel's back. And I was going, that was it. I'm going to try and make a difference.
I really admire that courage and caring about something enough to make a huge decision in that moment. I think that's sometimes what it takes to shift the momentum of our lives that can easily carry us past doing something we care about. Yeah, it's amazing. Just really quickly pulling on the thread. I can't help but a little bit pull on this thread because I've lived in the Philippines for 8 years, and it's been a fascinating experience for me to deep learn another culture. And it takes a number of years before you start to see the underlying, the not so obvious parts of the way people are wired through culture and belief systems. And yeah, I've really seen that here, where the stigma of seeking mental help is still, I mean, mental wellness help is still very, it's very many years, it's decades behind. I think it's like what I remember in the U.S. a long time ago, we were like that. But yeah, I love seeing that you're in this market. That makes me really excited. I've got a kind of a question. Is there anything you want to say about that
No, no,
beyond?
no, no,
Okay.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah.
So I just appreciate that, and I would love to do anything I can to also help you connect in this market. I'd love to talk more. So I have a kind of a question about your experience when it comes to seeing that, recognizing you've got this passion and this, you have to do this thing, and you go jump in. What was that like for you? What did you discover in the shift from going from corporate to being an entrepreneur and starting something from scratch? What kind of challenges have you run into?
Wow, Eli, so many challenges. When you're in corporate, you have a team, you have a budget, you have a strategy, and really life is very simple in the corporate world. It's probably not that exciting, but it is very simple. When you suddenly follow your passion, you have to create your own tribe. You have to create your own vision. You have to find your own budget. You have so much education that you end up, talking to other people and really convincing them to come on your journey and follow your vision. There's a really, I think people underestimate how much energy is spent getting people on board your vision and everything that is needed to start up your own business. You don't have a budget. You don't even have a strategy. You've just got a passion. You certainly don't have the money. The challenges are enormous. And, for anyone that is thinking of being an entrepreneur, it might sound fun, but while you need a lot of resilience to really follow through on what you believe.
Oh man, so many things you just said that I wish I heard in my 20s. um, I think in my first businesses, I tried to do everything alone so much, and I had no idea how to come up with a vision that mattered to people and speak it over and over again, and enlist support and gather resources. I did gather resources the first time I started a business. I guess maybe I did a little bit, but only in the last couple of years have I started to recognize the value of casting that vision over and over and over again and trying to enlist support toward it. So I'm amazed that you seem to have understood those things much quicker than I did as in your entrepreneurial journey. Like, how did you, well, first of all, when did you start? Like, I don't think I got the timeline.
Started in 2017, so November 2017 was the first month that we started. I can't believe that we're 2021 now, but here we are.
Cool. And from what I've seen, it looks like you've gotten a good bit of traction, and you're in multiple markets now. So congrats on that. What
Thank
what
you.
what were the first things you did? Like, what did you, when you just quit your job? Like, what did you do first?
So that's really interesting. The first thing that I did was grab my mobile phone. When we talk about MVP, this was the first thing. I grabbed my mobile phone, changed my phone plan so I had unlimited text. And I said to people, I'm now working as a psychologist. You can text me 24/7 and I'll text you back from my mobile phone. And I managed to get a charity to sponsor me $5,000 a month to be on call 24/7. And I worked every hour that God sent, just taking calls and, well, taking text messages. So that was my first MVP. So I didn't have any technology. I just started on a mobile phone, and it was just me, myself, and I testing, is this a valid service? Do people want it, and will it work?
That is brilliant. I get goosebumps listening to you say that, because not only just the imagining doing that and engaging with all those people in that are going through what they're going through, but also just spending that much energy, getting some backing so that you can do that, just enough so that somebody understands that's worth supporting, but then digging in and doing it yourself, and getting in the trenches, as you said. Like, you were sitting there, you're just testing and getting so much data on whether people really want this and what works, and now it's really wired into your brain, right? So now you know your product. That's amazing. A little bit of a sidetrack question here. Did you ever want to be an entrepreneur before you had this drive, this mission?
Um, I don't think, in my generation, we didn't know the concept of entrepreneur. But when I
Mm,
look back on my childhood, and as I grew up, I've actually always been an entrepreneur. I always had a side hustle. I was always, when I was at school, I was selling. My father worked for a clothing company that had a factory seconds outlet. I would buy the factory seconds and I would sell it to all my friends at a markup. I've always been side hustling, buying and selling stuff. It didn't really occur to me that I probably was an entrepreneur. We just didn't have the terminology for it.
mm, yeah, which means you wired your brain, or your brain got wired very early in your life to see gaps or needs, and see resources, and and do the work to get them connected, right?
I think so, Eli. And I've always sort of enjoyed that, looking for the gaps and seeing, what do customers want and how can we give a better experience?
Beautiful. That is the key. So, when it comes to, let's talk a little bit about that. Like, in the last 4 years of building this service and product, um, how have you continued? How have you? What have you done to make sure that you can maintain directionally correct product development? In other words, like, making sure that you're really continuing to build what your customers need, and making sure you've got a flow of customer feedback that's informing that.
So that's taken us a while to develop, but we needed to sort of do to close the loop of that customer experience. So what we've done now, we have a global IT platform that really is like the Uber of psychology. Um, and after every session, we send out a short little survey that's only sort of 4 or 5 questions that invites people to provide feedback. There's also, open questions that they can make comments. And I review that on a daily basis. I'm very attached very closely to our customer feedback. And I review that on a daily basis and make sure that we're really hearing the customer. I'll also, quality control our different sessions and make sure that I look through and that each customer is having a really good experience. This is really important. I've really noticed the difference. Obviously, we're here in Australia, New Zealand, and Philippines, but it's really important to understand that we're delivering a culturally appropriate service. So the feedback that we get from the Philippines is very, very different from what we get from Australia. And
Mm,
making sure that we are really picking up on that and delivering those services. So we did a full loop back again. We very much are data driven. We collect lots and lots of data. We do, that endless survey, and I constantly review all of that. And then I'll touch base with key stakeholders. So obviously we've got companies in the Philippines. I'll be constantly feed that back and talking to the stakeholders about, what's happening on their side. So it's just an endless journey.
That is really beautifully said, and I love how you've been so committed. Sounds like you've been just consistently committed to keep your brain on that data, and I think that's vital. Um, One thing I've noticed in observing tech startups over the years is that it gets very difficult for the founders to, as they grow and scale and start to get some success. The founders start to get split, kind of pulled between growth and partnerships and branding and marketing, and like you've got to stay connected to that, otherwise the company doesn't keep growing. But you also need a lot of brain time on that product ownership that I think you're describing. Have you started to see any challenges with you being pulled or needing to be in both those places?
So, Eli, I think any entrepreneur must know this now. You work 7 days a week. And I have done since we started 4 years ago or back in 2017. So there is never enough time in the day. So you're quite right. I'm involved we have a fantastic marketing manager, but, I'm still involved in marketing. I'm very much involved in the IT development. I'm involved in customer feedback. I'm involved in clinical. So yes, my day is never sort of structured. I'm always doing something every day, but that's the life of being an entrepreneur. You need to be across all of that. You can delegate, but it's really important that you still stay across that and that you're aware of what's happening in every area of your business.
Yeah, I agree. That's where it gets challenging as you grow and continuing to focus on enlisting, like you said, enlisting the right support by growing the team, right?
Mm.
Um, so I guess kind of on that topic, when it comes to making sure you've consistently got the support that you need to keep moving in the right direction, what have you found to be successful and most successful when it comes to partnerships or support channels that have led to your success? How have you used those?
So, partnerships are really, really important. And I think our expansion into the Philippines wouldn't have been nearly successful had we not made sure that we had culturally appropriate partnerships. So I sort of find not only within my own team, where we have partnerships, but also with the key stakeholders, that's invaluable. Certainly when it comes to cultural relevance, as we've expanded globally, I would strongly sort of recommend to any entrepreneur is look for those culturally appropriate partnerships, people that understand your market better than you understand it. Um, and don't try to be the subject matter expert on everything. Let them guide you and be the learner rather than the teacher. So I'm all for making sure that partnerships and collaboration. Often we think in business that we must be the leader, and I think that collaboration and partnerships are totally undervalued in the entrepreneur space.
I have also underutilized, under leveraged partnerships in my entrepreneurial journey. I think I'm starting to get the hang of it a little bit more. Um, I have some of my own thoughts on how to identify great partnerships, but like, do you have any tips that you would give people who maybe aren't experts in this yet? Like, let's say maybe you're going into a new market, maybe you're not, maybe you just want to improve the way that you grow your business through partnerships. What do you look for in, how do you vet and sort of, choose partners?
So partnerships, often we think from a corporate sort of hat on, we think partnerships is about a financial return on investment. So it's a shared value. What is the percentage shared revenue model? But that's probably incorrect. I think what we need to do when you're looking at, certainly in the entrepreneurial space, is shared value in terms of, do they understand your vision? Um, if a partner does not understand your vision, does not get excited about what you are trying to achieve, and does not believe in what you are offering, then they are not the right partner. It doesn't matter what percentage revenue share you agree on. If your values do not align and if they are not excited about what you do, it's a non-starter. So my best advice is, don't worry about the finances to begin with. Make sure that that partnership is based on passion and values.
Dervla, like what you just said is a clip that I think a lot of people should be playing on loop in business, because I've learned that really the hard way, and it took me so long. It kind of hit me a couple of years ago that most of the businesses that I've started through my life, I ended up at some point a couple of years in getting a little disillusioned, or not really excited about where we were headed. And it took me so long to realize that that was the underlying reason for that pattern, is
Yeah.
because I had worldview or values misalignment with the people that I was partnered with. And yeah, I think that advice you just gave is so key. I think it's also very difficult, because sometimes even now I find myself with opportunities to do business with people, companies, clients, et cetera, that kind of come in the door, and I want to I want to close that business,
Mm.
but I also have this gut feeling that we just don't see things the same, and we maybe don't prioritize people as much as, the same way. And
Yeah.
yeah, I still don't think I'm following that advice as much as I believe I should be, but I think it's amazing advice. Definitely. So tell me a little bit about your purpose. I don't know if this phrase makes sense, but um I'm trying to think of his name, the author of I read a book recently called Cult Status by Tim Duggan there in Australia, and he said he uses this phrase called, or it's called a purpose statement. So I'm curious, like what is the purpose statement, or the closest thing you have to it, where when you reach this goal, you'll feel like we've really achieved what I set out caring about.
So, really, that's something that I spend a lot of time on, is how do we define our purpose? And just to sort of to wind it back again, but when I told you that story and we came across that young man, and I realized that he hadn't reached out to anyone. Initially, I thought our purpose was to provide 24/7 support. I thought that was our purpose. But in actual fact, it's occurred to me that our mission is actually to provide access to hope. That when anyone is feeling down, that we are there to provide hope, that there is a solution and that someone is there to listen and that you can reach out. And that is my global purpose, that whether you are in the Philippines, in Zimbabwe, or Australia, that you can reach out and that hope is available. And I feel that my mission will be reached, or our purpose will be reached, when everyone knows that hope is available to them.
I love that. That's a metric. I wonder when you'll know that you've hit that one. Um, but that's amazing. So I also am kind of fascinated by the psychology behind what you're doing, because you're kind of going backwards in technology, where you're reverting to some older tech. You're moving away from a lot of the ways that we communicate now, and back toward text messaging and simpler methods of communication. I guess tell the audience a little bit about, maybe it seems a little bit obvious, but what are the nuanced reasons that you think that is so key?
So I think when it comes to mental health, people really struggle to verbalize how they're feeling. And certainly if it's really crucial, like they are feeling suicidal, or there's so much stigma about saying, I'm depressed or I'm anxious. So we really had to choose a method of engagement that was less confronting. And really, text messaging, because there's the non-verbals behind it, is less confronting. People say to me, yes, but it's not as effective. And I've been a psychologist now for 22 years, and I will tell you that people will tell me more via text than they would ever tell me face to face or over the phone, because it is non confronting. So we really needed to find a way of communicating that was more comfortable for people. And really, this is just globally, we've noticed that text messaging is definitely a form of engagement that will encourage people to reach out without feeling embarrassed, without feeling confronted. It's a way that's really convenient. And for many people, it is the only option to seek mental health services. And from a technology point of view, what I was really, really keen to establish when I set up Virtual Psychologist is I wanted no barriers. So a lot of the mental health services at the moment, you have to download an app, then you have to create a profile, and then all of this. I looked at our technology and I went, what is available on every single person's mobile phone straight away? As they buy the mobile phone, what's already there? SMS is already on your phone. You don't have to download an app or anything. When we went to the Philippines, we looked at what is the most common channel of communication that people generally use in the Philippines, and it was MSN Messenger. So we went, right, we're offering mental health services for Messenger. And what's so interesting in our research, and we gather a lot of data, is 67% of those people that engage with us via text messaging are saying that they would never have reached out for any psychological support if text counseling had not been available. And, that to me is just a huge figure to say we are doing something right. These people would not have reached out for any
Mhm.
help if they
Yeah.
didn't have text. So, that's kind of the underlying simplicity of why we've gone backwards to something that I feel is very effective.
I love that. And I really love when I see entrepreneurs, or let's just say problem solvers, people that are genuinely keyed in on understanding the people that they're trying to solve the problem for and getting deeply
Mm,
embedded in that, those people's shoes, being extremely prudent and seeing technology as a tool, but not the purpose. Like, I think we get sometimes a little obsessed and a little bit overly attached to using new technology, and
mm,
we forget to ask, like, do I really need to use this? Is this really better? Is this
mm,
really helping? And I totally agree with you. Like, sometimes we're just creating extra layers of friction in the process or the customer experience when we could just use something simpler. And I love how you've done that. I also, when I moved to the Philippines, it was a very fascinating gradual realization how different things were. For example, Facebook had set up a deal with the telcos here so that basically everybody in the country has free access to Messenger, but
mm,
they have to, but they don't. They most of many people really don't keep load on their phones. They do now, but
mm,
back then a lot of people just didn't have load on their phones. They definitely didn't have data, and so the only way, even SMS was more expensive than Messenger. So
mm.
I'm not surprised at all that you guys came here and found out that Facebook Messenger was necessary if you wanted to help this market. Yeah,
I
fascinating
think
things you learn like that. Go ahead.
as we go global, we're looking at the Japanese market and Singapore, all the rest of it is. Being an entrepreneur is really funny that and very rewarding that you can be so agile. We do look at whatever is the main form of communication within that country. We use
Mhm.
the API and create that channel. Philippines for us is such an interesting market, and it's one that I'm passionate about because I believe that they really have a huge demand for our service. The country has changed legislation now that employers are regulated to provide mental health services to their employees. And ours is just a simple solution that people feel comfortable. People will text because mental health is still so stigmatized in the Philippines.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I'm excited to see solutions like this here.
Mm,
Um, it's really exciting to see people have more access because I've got a lot of friends who I've seen go through challenges where they don't really know who to reach out to, and
mm,
I've been that friend many times, but I can't help everyone as a friend.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, so let's see what else you think would be, really valuable. What are some Here's a question I have for you. When you left your corporate career and decided to do this, and you've been now 4 years down this path, what were some of the skills that you had already built through that career and experiences that have served you, and then what are some things that you realized you just needed to learn? Like, what were some of the gaps for you?
So I think some of the skills were more just, obviously my clinical skills as a psychologist and, what it takes to do clinical governance and that sort of thing. What I've learned in the entrepreneurial space is more about technology and taking people on your journey. So that communication message I've had to learn. And learning about different technologies. I'm a psychologist. What do I know about technology? I've had to learn all of that. But something that I say to all entrepreneurs is, don't worry about what you know in the corporate and what you know in different aspects of your new startup. Is follow your gut all the time. There's so many times I have a vision. I don't know how we're going to get there, but I back myself and I believe we'll get there, and I believe the right people will fall into my path and help me get there. So there's a lot of things that I knew in corporate. There's a lot of contacts that I had in corporate that I've been able to take into the entrepreneurial world. But at the end of the day, when you start your own journey, you've just got to back yourself. You've got to follow your gut instinct, and you've just got to believe. And there will be days that you want to quit. There will be days that you wonder why you ever did it. But you know what? You just wake up the next morning, you remember that that one life that you've saved is worth it, and you continue.
That's beautifully said, Dervla. And I will just say honestly, I think the way that you communicate is incredibly powerful. It's concise, and it surprises me that you felt like you didn't have that skill a couple of years ago. And you didn't understand, like you had to learn all about technology, which also just tells me that you must be a very you must be someone who has remained open to lifelong learning, and like you're very updatable. You must, I've got this tattoo on my arm that means always open to change. And I think no matter what our biological age may be, the more adaptable we are, and the more we can just continue learning all the time. So I love watching you learn so fast and do this. But you just touched on something about the the days you want to quit, and I actually had made a note that I wanted to ask you something about this, because I've worked alone for so many of the years of my life as an entrepreneur, and I've gone through a lot of self-criticism, self-doubt, just a lot of a kind of emotional roller coaster, which I kind of dealt with too much alone, I think. But so I've really felt the struggles of being an entrepreneur a lot of times alone. But what have you run into when it comes to like the challenges on the emotional side of being a founder?
Well, I think every entrepreneur feels it, that it can be really frustrating that you're so incredibly passionate about what you do. And sometimes that's a very lonely journey. And I'm sure you felt like it too, Eli, where you've got such a great cause and such a meaningful purpose. But what you find in the real world is often it's just financially driven. People don't care really what you do, it's all about the money. So for me, what I've done to try overcome that is, first of all, set up a really good team. And what I do is everyone that is involved in my business, from the accountant that does my accounts to the lawyers that do our contracts, I include them in a part of our journey. So I tell them all the lives that we save, any lives that we change. And I say to them that although they might not be on the front line guiding or counseling that person, their assistance has helped save that life. So I make everyone feel like they're a part of my business. And that just means I have a bigger support team by ensuring that everyone knows that it's not just me in this business, it's everyone, and they all contribute. Even when I have journalists that are doing an article about me, I tell them the fact that they print this article means that they're saving lives, and I include them on the newsletter, and I call them mental health warriors. So everyone feels like they're a part of what I'm doing. And then the other thing that I do is I do read the feedback from our clients every day. I read the feedback. I have a little alert that tells me when someone leaves feedback, and I follow that feedback religiously, because most of the time it's really positive, with someone saying, "Thanks, you made a difference." And just getting that every day makes me realize that sometimes, yeah, I don't feel like getting out of bed, but I know for that one person, I've made a difference, and that spurs me on. Um, so it's really about building up your own tribe and your own team and staying really connected to that customer journey. And then I sort of feel you can survive anything. Look, there are days that you still don't want to get out of bed, but generally just broadening your network and creating a team environment and keeping that feedback coming, through every single day. And that's how you keep building, and you sort of, I don't know, you face any adversity.
Wow. I just learned some things from you. Um, some of the things you just mentioned, I've only started to do a little bit better in the last couple of years, where I feel like I've, for the first time ever, really truly built a tribe of people that are we my partner Garrick and I, when we started this company, we very early on chose some core values that we've hired and built our culture around. And I feel like that this is the first company where I feel that that kind of nucleus from the very beginning was all the right people. And just the energy that that provides is so amazing, which I never quite had to this level before. um, but I just really love what you just said about, and I'm literally saying you're teaching me something here, but I not really thought about pitching everyone, every vendor, everybody that you do business with, even your clients. Like, I'm just thinking how many opportunities I have to do that better and to speak about our vision more, where I think if I did that, there would be conversations with clients that would be, even financial conversations, where they would be irrelevant. They wouldn't even happen, because we wouldn't, they would already know why we hold our ground on certain values. We're not going to bend on this business model because it protects our people. Like the example, just the more we pitch that vision, and kind of going back to what you just, a huge topic that I think we do have time to touch on, which I think is super important in the context of products with purpose, which is the realization I also had in the last maybe 6 or 7 years, is that capitalism has been amazing for the planet when it comes to innovation, but it's led us to a world where we assume that business is for the purpose of making certain people wealthy.
Mm.
And we've forgotten that it's really the core purpose, at least the core purpose of business can be, if we choose, to just solve problems.
Yeah.
And so what do you, I've taught, I really talk about this, this is a topic I'm passionate about. And I like asking people kind of this question: what evidence do you see that the world is headed in the right direction when it comes to seeing business as purpose first versus dollars first?
So, I think the reality, and I'm not sure we're actually there, that business is putting purpose first. I think there's a lot of lip service. We see a lot of corporate social responsibility and that sort of thing, but I'm still not convinced that there's genuine authenticity behind that statement. I think it is still very dollar driven. And I know when we pitch to clients and to organizations, and I say to them, yes, but we can save lives and change lives of your employees. At the end of the day, they say, yes, that's still nice, but how much are you going to change presenteeism, absenteeism, and staff turnover? Um, so I think I'm not convinced that we are purpose driven. I think there's too much lip service still there. It's changing. Even when we look at some of the investment funds, there's a lot more investment now sort of floating around for purpose-driven companies.
Mhm.
But I still think we've got a way to go for the reality of it being authentic.
I appreciate how you pushed back on. I phrased that question, you know, kind of leading you in the positive direction, and you pushed back, and I appreciate that. I heard this quote by Einstein, who, it's not a quote that people seem to know that much, and I had to really dig to make sure it really was him who said it, and it appears that it was. He said that one of the most important, or I think he said the most important decision a human can ever make is whether to believe the universe is friendly or hostile.
Mm.
And that statement had me thinking for a very long time, like, why would he say that? And why is it a decision? And I realized that, like, there's so many people I grew up with who watch the news every day who are just convinced the world is really heading in the wrong direction, and
Mm.
it's irreparable, etc. And there's probably no way to objectively prove one way or the other, but one thing I have chosen is to zoom in, is kind of tune in to the data points that give me hope. It's like what you said about making sure people have access to hope. I would argue that as entrepreneurs, we need to tune in.
Yeah.
I believe it's something I've just chosen, and I've actually been shocked. Dervla is like the more, and starting a podcast with this title and talking specifically, going out into the world and looking for people like yourself that are doing this. I'm actually shocked how much I see. I think there is a trend happening, and I know it's very early, and I know I don't disagree with you. We're absolutely not there yet. Large corporations, for sure, not really. it's mostly lip service at this point, because that's not the way the models were built, right? That's not the way the financial, like, even legislation, like they're not allowed. The shareholder supremacy says that, like, you can't make decisions that aren't in the best interest of your shareholders. So it's just
Yeah.
built that way. But
Yeah.
I do see trends, and it does excite me. And I think there are a lot of consumers that are now buying products and services, not just because of price and quality, but because of the purpose that they see. So I think, do you think that it's important for, do you think that makes sense, that it's important for us to tune in to the data that says that, maybe it is really heading in the right direction, or at least starting?
Absolutely, absolutely. It is. I think it's really important. There's always got to be a sense of hope and positivity that there is change. One of the interesting things that I found in our data, and we're very fortunate that we can compare, Australia and New Zealand to the Philippines, is we do in one of our questions ask people to rate our service, out of 10 and give us feedback. And what's really interesting is the Philippines are by far a more positive nation than the Australians in how they provide feedback. Their feedback is always one or two increments higher than Australians in general. They're always more thankful, more appreciative, and just sort of that little bit more content and grateful for the service we provide to them than what the Australians are. And, we've been gathering this data now, certainly from the Philippines, for over 2 years. And it's just really interesting to see that culturally, there is such a difference between Australians and Philippines people based on a service that they're getting from their corporate companies.
Wow, that there's so much that I want to touch on what you just said, because the experience I've had, moving from the US to the Philippines in 2014, I would say about 1 year later, I realized that the business that I moved here to help or to grow wasn't going to work out in this market then. And so I was faced with deciding whether to go back or not. And one of the biggest reasons that just hit me really hard that I did not want to go back is very connected to what you just said, is that I really didn't want to go back to America because there's like too much complaining. And here I'm around all these people that, even though a lot of them are just in a life situation that's so much less comfortable, that they're more grateful and they're more appreciative and they're just generally more happy. Now, I will also say that when it comes to feedback, it's hard for me to get people here to be honest sometimes. Like they're very hesitant to tell you the truth if it's not good. I will tell you that. Like, you might not get the honest negative feedback in this country very easily. I will tell you that.
Mhm.
But generally speaking, the just talking about the, gratitude and the energy of noticing what you like versus what you don't like, it's so powerful. And I've learned a lot from being here in that. Um, going back to what you were saying earlier when you were talking about the challenges of being an entrepreneur and the things that get you through, having that constant feedback, that channel of feedback where you're seeing it every day. You've got your tribe, you've got the different things you listed off that help you. I think what I'm hearing in that is that you're seeing evidence of progress, which keeps you alive, keeps you in the game. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
And for me, that kind of directly relates with why I liked to tune in to stories like yours. And I just am, it keeps me excited, believing that there is progress in the right direction, because I really do. I love the concept of business. I like learning about how to get better at solving problems, building teams, forming partnerships. But I didn't find enjoyment in doing that for the purpose of making money. Like, when
Yeah.
that was just my driver, I mean, that was my driver for decades, and I got burnt out on it, and I did okay, but I didn't really have fun. So I just think it's awesome hearing your story of how you've gotten to this point, and how driven you are because of that passion, but also, like, you're good at it. Like, it sounds like you're just really really doing a great job learning all the different parts of it. So
Thank
congrats
you.
so far.
Thank you.
Um, is there anything else that you would like to, leave people with when it comes to just sort of, um, yeah, either
Yeah.
about where you're headed, or what you could recommend to others that are doing similar things to what you're doing? Any
I
thoughts?
think, look, we're headed to really reach every corner of the globe and provide hope to anyone. That's my big, hairy, audacious goal is wherever you are, whoever you are, we will become a Coca-Cola brand for mental well-being services. When you're really stuck and if you can't talk, just text, you will know the name of our company. That's the big, hairy, audacious goal. But to any entrepreneur out there is the journey will be long. The journey will be hard. Always remember your why. Work really hard and getting that feedback to constantly reinforce your why and be patient. It is not going to happen overnight. You got to realize that you're in this for the long haul and you will get many people that tell you that they love your idea, but actually won't support you. And you will follow many leads and you will work 24/7. And some days you won't have enough money to pay your staff or to even cover your mortgage. And you will wonder why you sacrifice so much when really you could be in a corporate job working 9 to 5 and no one will thank you. But at the end of the day, you're doing it for a reason. And look at all the good things in the fact that you are making a difference, you are changing lives, you are saving lives, and that you've got a higher purpose. And I think when it comes to what is wealth or how do you value success, it's up to you to redefine that. It is not necessarily the dollars in your bank account. It's about defining success and realizing what is your measure for success. And for me, I go to bed at night knowing that that person nearly took their own life, but they reached out, they got the help that they needed, and we saved a life. That to me is wealth. You can't replace that with money. So for everyone, just be patient, know your why, and get up every morning and believe that today's your day and do something amazing and be brave. And that's my advice.
Man, you just really inspired me. I think I could light a fire under myself a little more than I do some days, and that's very inspiring. I love the passion and the determination that I hear in your voice, and when you talk about your brand being known globally, like I believe you. So to anyone who happens to be listening to this, like what kind of support do you need right now? Who for whoever's listening out there, what kind of introduction would you love to have right now into what market or what kind of support do you need to enlist right now?
So anyone that's out there in any country that is in a position of influence, whether you're looking for support for your staff, someone that's in a company that's looking for support for staff. We particularly focus on a B2B model. We provide a new, innovative, and cost-effective way of providing mental health services to those people that just can't reach out for help. So if you can get us a network in, an introduction in, please, would love to hear from you. We would love to make a difference, certainly in the Philippines. My heart and passion is in the Philippines. Even if you can't help now, but you've been inspired, please just drop me a line. Let's keep the communication open, and you never know down the track how we can help each other.
Dervla, I love your warmth and genuine passion for what you're doing, and thank you. I've personally enjoyed this conversation very, very much. Thanks for being here. How can people? What's the best way for people to reach out to you if they wanted to connect?
So please feel free to email me. So you've got my name there on the screen. So Dervla at virtualpsychologist.com.au. Find me on LinkedIn. Visit our website, virtualpsychologist.com.au. We in Philippines, we're also known as Hope Chat. So please jump on LinkedIn, jump on email, jump on our website, any which way. Would love to set up a team meeting with you, a phone call, any which way to say hello. Even if you just want to chat, feel free to make contact.
That's amazing. I hope you can sustain that for many years to come. Totally amazing. We'll definitely put the links also in when we publish this as a podcast, etc. So thank you
Brilliant.
super much, Dervla. And it's
Lovely. Thanks, Eli.
been very, very nice chatting with you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Eli, and thanks to everyone.